There's an expression for when something succeeds so completely that nobody can quite explain it. Lightning in a bottle. Disney knew all about lightning. They had seen it many times. That moment when a young performer connects with an audience in a way that goes beyond a show, beyond anything you can really plan for. But witnessing lightning and holding on to it are two very different things. For 50 years, Disney kept finding it and letting it slip away. But every time it disappeared, they got a little better at building the bottle. So by the time a monster storm arrived in 2006, they were ready for it. That storm's name was Hannah Montana. If you are unaware, Hannah Montana was all about a teenage girl living a normal life during the day and secretly performing as one of the biggest pop stars in the world at night. The show absolutely exploded almost immediately. Albums went to #1, the concert tour sold out in minutes, every type of merchandise you can fathom flooded stores across the country. Millions of kids were obsessed with Hannah Montana and Miley Cyrus, who played her. Like I said, it was lightning in a bottle. This video is going to explore the success of Hannah Montana, but we are going to take the scenic route. That way we can understand the roads that led Disney to arrive at the Wiganomenon phenomenon. That sounded much better in my head than it did coming out of my mouth. I'm not even sure if it made any sense at all, but buckle up, folks. We are starting this road trip, and it begins with a time machine. The year is 1955. Television is still a relatively new invention, and most of Hollywood isn't quite sure what to do with it yet. Many film studios see it as competition, something that might pull audiences away from theaters and into their living rooms. But Walt Disney sees it differently. To him, television isn't a threat at all. It's actually an opportunity, a way to bring Disney into people's homes every single day. One of his first experiments was the Mickey Mouse Club, which was a group of young performers, singers, dancers, comedians, all hosting a daily variety show. Those performers were called Mouseketeers. To find them, Disney scouts traveled all around Southern California, looking for talented kids with a twinkle in their eye. At one recital for Swan Lake, they discovered a 12-year-old girl named Annette Funicello. At first, she was just one Mouseketeer among many. The show was not built around a single star, but once it aired, something very interesting happened. Letters started arriving at the studio, hundreds at first, and then thousands. Annette was receiving between 6,000 and 10,000 pieces of fan mail every month. Even people involved in the show struggled to explain exactly why she connected so strongly with audiences. Walt said he noticed a warmth and sincerity in her that felt genuine on camera. Annette herself thought part of it was that she seemed like an ordinary kid rather than a polished performer. Whatever the reason, the signal was very clear. Young girls are not passive viewers. No, in no way, shape, or form. They were rabid dogs that were hungry for something fun but familiar. That insight shaped everything that followed. Walt took a personal interest in protecting her image once it became obvious how strongly audiences had latched on. In her autobiography, Funicello recalled that Walt personally asked her to promise she wouldn't pose in ways that might damage the wholesome reputation she'd built. Specifically, no bikinis while working with Disney. Annette agreed and did honor that for her entire time with the network. I found that detail genuinely interesting because it shows that even in the 1950s, Disney understood that when audiences fall in love with a young star, the image is a huge part of the product. What they hadn't figured out yet was how to turn that love into something that lasted. Annette's popularity translated into films and music, but those projects were relatively isolated events. Once the Mickey Mouse Club ended and she got older, the moment faded. Disney had discovered this talent, this lightning, but the infrastructure to actually hold it just didn't exist yet. They spent much of the 60s and 70s trying to recreate that kind of attachment, casting young actors repeatedly in family films, hoping audiences would start to associate them with Disney. Think Jodie Foster and Kurt Russell. But movies are occasional. Seeing someone once every year or two isn't the same as having them in your living room every day. The launch of the Disney Channel in 1983 solved that problem, and is, pretty critical to the existence of Hannah Montana. A dedicated TV network delivering programming directly into kids' homes meant Disney could build ongoing relationships with its audience in a way that theatrical releases never could. Then in the 90s, the Mickey Mouse Club came back and once again proved Disney's almost suspicious instinct for finding talent. That cast in the 90s, Britney Spears, Justin Timberlake, Christina Aguilera, Ryan Gosling. In hindsight, that concentration of future superstars in one room at the same time is knuckin' futs. But as we know, none of them blew up under the Disney umbrella. The MMC was boot camp. It prepped them, trained them, and sent them off into Hollywood combat. Disney saw none of the benefits from the peak of their fame, despite having prepared them for it. Once again, they found all this lightning and had no way to hold it. By 2001, the Disney Channel made a move that changed everything. It shifted from premium to basic cable. That meant that the Disney Channel was now available to millions more people. And that same year, Lizzie Maguire premiered. No big deal, just the single most important piece of media during my entire childhood, that's all. Lizzie Maguire was that perfect blend of aspirational and relatable, which is a very tough line to walk. Hilary Duff played Lizzie as genuinely anxious, funny, and good-hearted. The show perfectly externalized being pubescent and perpetually uncertain about everything. Little girls that watched her felt recognized, and in my opinion, that is one of our most primal needs as human beings. It is a very, very powerful thing to feel seen, and it completely changes the viewing experience. You're not just watching a show at that point. You are now invested in that character, and let me tell you how invested little me was in Lizzie Maguire. When that Ronnie fella dumped her, I'm still mad. I'm getting hot about it. I was angry. I felt like I had just been dumped. I was in 3rd grade, but it was a dagger. The North remembers Ronnie and his crimes. That stupid, spiky-haired little When a piece of media seems to know something about your specific experience, you attach to it, and it almost feels like it becomes a part of you. Lizzie Maguire ran for 2 seasons, and these were old school seasons, okay? Big Daddy seasons, not the 10-episode miniseries nonsense we are used to today. The success extended far beyond the screen. Disney leaned into merchandise harder than they ever had on the channel. Dolls, bedroom sets, video games. They even produced a fictional book for the show, The Orchids and Gumbo Poker Club, and I had this book as a little girl. Correction, I have this book as a big ol' adult. Yes, I did buy it the second I relearned about it. I was on Amazon immediately. I had to have it again. How funny and how niche would it be to do a book review of this fictional book from a fictional TV show that aired in 2001? I may just do that, and I'm sure 17 people will view it, being generous. I am unwell. Like everyone else around my age, I am desperately, cringedly seeking nostalgia to heal my childhood trauma. I will let you know if the Orchids and Gumbo Poker Club hits harder than Wellbutrin. What was I even talking about before getting into this book? Merchandise. It was merchandise. Estimates suggest the merchandise alone generated close to $100 million doll hairs. And that made Mickey Mouse very happy. He had big old fat dollar signs in his eyes. And then there was the music. Her single, I Can't Wait, was the first signal that a Disney Channel star could cross over into real music success. That single appeared on the Lizzie Maguire show soundtrack, a soundtrack that was released through Hollywood Records, which was Disney's own in-house record label. Very, very smart, by the way. It meant that every dollar stayed in the building, and it made a lot of dollars. It went platinum. Then came the Lizzie Maguire movie in 2003, which proved that a Disney character could cross over to real theatrical success. Disney was learning piece by piece how to build something that generated revenue in every direction at once. But just as Disney was starting to rake in the real big money with Hillary, they lost her. After being approached about a Lizzie Maguire spinoff and more movies, Team Duff and Team Disney failed to come to an agreement in the dinero department. Hillary walked away from the mouse, and her rocket to fame immediately followed. Disney had yet another frustrating tango with lightning that they just couldn't contain. If there is one thing to know about Disney, know that it is always cooking. And over there, they are prepping for the next meal. And over there, they are grocery shopping for more ingredients for the meal after that. And upstairs, they're on Pinterest scrolling for even more recipes for next week. All of that to say that while the Hillary Duff situation was unfolding, the network was already operating under a framework that not a lot of people know about. But once you know about the framework and understand why the framework is in place, it definitely helps make sense of what I am talking about Disney doing. I will preface with, yes, it sounds ass backwards and confusing, but I will do my absolute best to clarify. For Disney Channel, longevity was not the goal. Most of the Disney sitcoms were produced under an informal ceiling of about 65 episodes. Sounds like a bizarrely specific number. I know, but Disney did not do this on accident. Disney has no accidents ever. That is the second thing to know about Disney. Absolutely everything is done purposefully. 65 episodes was the exact number needed to air a show every weekday for 13 weeks, which meant Disney could cycle those episodes through the schedule over and over without producing new content. TLDR, they wrung those suckers dry, threw them to the side, and stayed hydrated off of what was squeezed. You may now be in ass backwards mode, thinking this makes absolutely no sense. Why would they cut a good thing off? I was in the same ass backwards boat. I thought I was hitting the mango Maui Wowie white monster combo a little too hard, but I sat with the information for a little bit, chugged the rest of my battery acid bull sperm, crushed the can against my head, and then it came to me. It was all about control. Disney's core audience, kids and tweens, roughly 6 to 14 years old, turns over incredibly fast. A 9-year-old who falls in love with a show can age completely out of the channel within a few years. And the actors are growing up just as quickly. A 13-year-old lead would be 17 by the time a 4th season wrapped, ready to move towards something edgier, something more mature. So instead of stretching shows out for 10 seasons, the way traditional networks might, Disney built a system designed to constantly refresh. Think about how musicians talk about albums today. They say that the album really isn't even the product, it's the marketing for the real moneymaker, which is the tour. Disney figured out in the early 2000s that the show was just the spark. The merchandise, the music, the brand, that was the eternal flame. Lizzie Maguire made that very clear. They are still pumping Lizzie Maguire merch like crazy. I bought the entire Lizzie Maguire ColourPop collection, and I'm about to buy a Fuzzy Star hand mirror just because it's Lizzie Maguire as well. But getting back to what I said, Disney Channel was always cooking. Lucky for them, and even luckier for us, the next dish hot out of the oven was a great one. That's So Raven premiered in 2003, starring the once-in-a-generation talent Raven-Symoné. This show stuck to a very straightforward principle, I guess you could say, and it's one that the Disney writers' room would return to again and again: an ordinary person in an extraordinary situation. Raven Baxter was a regular teenage girl who got psychic flashes of the future. Each episode followed her hysterically and desperately trying to prevent the disaster she foresaw, and making things significantly worse in the process. It was a great concept and executed flawlessly. But honestly, it could have been dumb as shit and horrible, but if Raven was still involved in the show, it would have been incredible still. She was that good. According to interviews with the show's creators, Raven's comedic timing and improv instincts were so strong that the show and the character were built around her specifically. Raven introduced a comedy style that became Disney Channel's signature DNA. Big reactions, crazy disguises, exaggerated chaos, hijinks, sassiness, and sarcasm. Raven was the blueprint, and I don't think she gets enough credit for shaping everything that followed That's So Raven on Disney Channel. The show was such an immediate hit that Disney did something they had never done before. They broke that 65 episode rule. Like Lizzie Maguire before it, the show hit the merchandise game hard and produced a soundtrack, with Raven's Disney pop debut, Superstar, as the lead single. But Raven had much bigger musical fish to fry. I have an editing note here that I just have to share. When I was envisioning this moment in the video, I wrote down on a sticky note that I want a cheetah growl to be a sort of segue from this That's So Raven comment to the Cheetah Girls, and I thought I was being so clever, so creative. I thought that would be the most incredible transition until I found out what a cheetah actually sounds like. So here is your factually accurate cheetah growl transition. But Raven had much bigger musical fish to fry. Disney adapted the Cheetah Girls, a young adult book series, into a Disney Channel original movie. It was about 4 girls trying to break into the music industry while navigating friendship, ambition, ego, and normal teenage shit on top of all that. It starred Raven Simone, Sabrina Bryan, as well as Keely Williams and Adrienne Bailon of 3LW. The Cheetah Girls premiered to 26.5 million viewers, one of the largest audiences Disney Channel had ever seen for a TV film. The soundtrack sold 2 million copies and was eventually certified double platinum. The merch, of course, followed and was very successful. I think anything leopard or cheetah printed at the time, whether it was branded Cheetah Girls or not, was very successful. I know I made my dad buy me a god-awful, ugly leopard print fur vest that I thought looked so cool, but I would not wear it anywhere outside of my bedroom. Still a big fan of the leopard cheetah print, though. It's all good. Disney ended up learning 2 very important things from the Cheetah Girls. One good and one pretty costly. The good lesson was that music-driven properties could expand far beyond the screen and could generate revenue across multiple arms of the company simultaneously. A sort of sub-lesson, a bullet point under that lesson, was that the kids didn't just want sitcom characters. They wanted these big aspirational pop stars too. This was the era of Britney Spears' dominance. Music was everything. We all wanted to be a pop star. Now, the expensive lesson, a franchise built around a group of teenagers is a liability, if you can believe it. Personalities clash, creative ambitions diverge, egos do what egos do over time. Throw hormones into the mix and a co-worker dynamic, along with the pressure that was on these young girls. I completely forgot about that aspect. Shocker. That's not a great combo. It's the equivalent of something I put together at the legal drinking age. I reached into my freezer, grabbed clear rum, regular rum, and get this, UV blue. You had to be there. UV blue was a very specific generational thing. That and the OG Four Loko, the original crazy formula that they had to quickly get rid of. That was an insane time. But getting back to my concoction, I had all of that going on in one bottle, added some Sprite, shook it up, and called it Mama's Potion. Needless to say, life lessons were learned that evening. The Cheetah Girls situation with all of those bad elements in the mix was the equivalent of Mama's Potion. Those tensions famously tore the Cheetah Girls apart, or at least fractured the Cheetah Girls. The second film was Raven's final appearance with the group, and they even went on to tour without her. I do want to connect the tour back to the first lesson about music being, ka-ching ka-ching. That caught Disney seemingly by surprise. So what happened with the Cheetah Girls, musically at least, was reactive rather than engineered from the jump. Producer Deborah Martin Chase was the one who saw real potential musically from the group, and she pushed Disney for real recording contracts, additional films, and touring. It's crazy to me that Disney didn't see that success coming. There is no documented quote connecting the Cheetah Girls directly to the creation of Hannah Montana, but that is my theory, that the Cheetah Girls heavily influenced Hannah Montana. Overall, I believe that the creation of Hannah Montana was this snowball that started with Annette Funicello, and by the time it picked up the Cheetah Girls, it was this mile-wide snowball. I think the Cheetah Girls was the biggest inspiration for the idea of Hannah Montana, and I believe That's So Raven was the biggest inspiration for the comedy of Hannah Montana. And fun fact, I did not know Hannah Montana, not Miley, opened for the Cheetah Girls on some dates of their The Party's Just Begun tour. By 2004, before a script ever existed, Disney Channel executives were actively looking for a series that combined television storytelling and music from the inside out, not just as an add-on, not just some half-assed soundtrack to accompany it, but music built directly into the DNA of the show. No more dipping their toes in the water. They were ready to go neck deep into the pop star pond. The guiding concept from the very beginning was a teenage girl living a double life as a pop star. The same Disney premise as That's So Raven: normal person, extraordinary circumstance. And not surprising at all, one of the co-creators of That's So Raven was a co-creator on Hannah Montana as well. I did see some stuff online about the original title being That's So Pop Star, which is obviously very similar to That's So Raven, but I couldn't find any credible source. I did, however, see the working or original title, The Secret Life of Chloe Stewart. And when I tell you that every teenage girl with a pulse in Hollywood auditioned for the role of Chloe Stewart, I am only being a little hyperbolic. This list is so crazy. Okay, are you ready for this? JoJo was the first choice, but she ended up declining the role. Sarah Paxton, Cassandra Scarbo, Jeanette McCurdy, Lucy Hale, Belinda, Shailene Woodley, Ashley Benson, Ashley Mashaka, who was confirmed. Daniela Monet and Taylor Momsen were confirmed to be part of the final three in the running for the role. Miley originally auditioned for Lily, but she was so charismatic and funny, they asked her to read for the lead role. Now this I don't quite understand, because they said from jump Miley was way too young, she was way too little, she was 11 years old and ended up wearing tons of makeup and put highlights in her hair to look older. So if that was the case, if she was always too young, why would you even put her through this? I don't know. She was actually rejected pretty late in the process, I believe, and early in the process because of her age, but she just kept sending them in audition tapes, I believe is how it went down. So I guess that is why you do it. I answered my own question. She was absolutely relentless. It seems like a very annoying Hollywood rigmarole, but Miley Cyrus was that undeniable. Her confidence and her comic timing were ultimately why she was chosen. The character name was changed to Zoe, and the original pop star name was supposed to be Alexis Texas, until one brave soul piped up in the writer's room and said, hey, maybe we don't go with that name. Maybe we go with Cayenne, Rhode Island. The rest is history. Hannah Montana was the quick pivot. I thought maybe there was a nepotism angle playing into why she got cast, but as far as I can tell, that was not the case. Billy Ray Cyrus, her father, prior to Hannah Montana and Old Town Road fame, was or is a country singer and was pretty big in the 90s because he had a hit song and a sick mullet. Miley's real life was bleeding into the character's life before a single frame had even been shot. The blurring of Hannah Montana and Miley Cyrus was baked into the show's DNA from the very beginning, a not so great idea in retrospect. But at the time, this was a dream come true, not just for Miley, but for Disney as well. They fully manufactured this show in a Mickey Mouse lab, aggressively targeting the tween market. Hannah Montana finally premiered on March 24th, 2006. Disney had built the whole machine for exactly this moment. Expectations were very high. They knew they had prepared, but what they didn't know yet was whether the audience would show up the way they were hoping they would. But they certainly did show up. A whopping whopper 5.4 million viewers showed up. This was the highest rated series premiere in the network's history at the time. It was an event. I remember watching the premiere and being absolutely transfixed. I was like 3 inches away from my TV. It was the ultimate fantasy. Really, I feel like it was 2 fantasies happening simultaneously. Miley Stewart, at her worst, her lame side, was being hilarious, rich, beautiful, having awesome friends, and a sick house. In Malibu, by the way, with the beach a stone's throw away. That was the lame Miley Stewart side. Then there was the exciting pop star side of her that had the limo out front, hottest styles, every shoe, every color. The best of both worlds, a fantasy in both worlds. The first season was fantastic. Variety reported by the end of season 1, Hannah Montana was consistently the most watched cable program among kids 6 to 14 years old. And that's not just on Disney, that's all of cable. It was a smash success. Miley was a superstar. The show had just the right amount of corny, by tween standards. And they really, really hit the merch game hard. Everything that came before Hannah Montana pales in comparison. There were Hannah Montana toothbrushes, hand soaps, lamps, Uno cards, nightlights, guitar-shaped purses, you name it, and it had Hannah Montana's cunty little wig on it. And just like everything before Hannah Montana merch-wise paled in comparison, same thing with the music. Hannah Montana, the self-titled album soundtrack situation, released on October 24th, 2006, and this masterpiece that I, a fully grown adult, listened to regularly, debuted at number 1 on the Billboard 200 chart, and it stayed there for 2 weeks. Eventually, it was certified 3 times platinum in the US, a fictional pop star. And there was absolutely no slowing the Hannah Montana train down. Season 2 aired in 2007, and the show was still pulling millions per episode. That Jonas Brothers episode from season 2, by the way, I remember where I was. Do you remember where you were? I know you were watching. You, me, and 10.7 million other people were watching. That is the highest viewed episode of Hannah Montana ever, and that doesn't surprise me one bit. Season 2 also gave us the accompanying soundtrack, Hannah Montana 2, Meet Miley Cyrus, blessing us undeservedly with Rockstar. This was a double album released during the early part of Season 2. The first disc was all Hannah, and the second introduced us to Miley Cyrus as a real recording artist with her own music. The album debuted at number 1 on Billboard 200 and sold over 300,000 its first week. Remember, this is a soundtrack to a kids' TV show. I need to give you a crazy comparison just so you can fully understand the phenomenon of Hannah Montana. In 2007, I will repeat, the Hannah Montana Meet Miley Cyrus album sold 300,000 copies the first week. The Blackout album by Britney Spears, the one, the only, the icon Britney Spears, sold 290,000. Hannah Montana / Miley Cyrus, a fictional pop star and some rando from Nashville, Tennessee, outsold the princess of pop music. The album went on to sell over 3 million copies in the US. That double album set up an incredibly ambitious tour, and that was the first and only, to my surprise. I thought there was at least one more Hannah Montana tour, but no, just the Best of Both Worlds tour. The moment Hannah Montana became a true, full-scale pop star phenomenon. It went from October 2007 to January 2008, spanned 71 arena shows across North America, and sold roughly 1 million tickets. Overall, I believe it grossed about $54 million. And just in case you need a reminder, this tour was headlined by a 15-year-old girl. The format for the show was super cool, but she must have been so exhausted. No, you just stick your butthole any place you want to. The first half of the concert featured Hannah Montana, Miley in a wig and full costume, before she disappeared backstage, returned as herself, and finished the show performing songs from the Meet Miley Cyrus half of the album. That little girl essentially performed 2 concerts in one night. Miley has reflected on this time as incredibly intense. She said the relentless pace of performing, traveling, and filming was a lot for her. In interviews, she also said that the experience of carrying both the Hannah Montana persona and her own rising music career simultaneously was exhausting and psychologically complicated. Season 3 was when I personally aged out of the show, but it was still a defining youth franchise at this time. Millions were still tuning in for each episode. The show itself was consistently strong, but everything else outside of the show was changing. Miley, the real Miley, was now a mainstream pop star on her own. Her 2008 album, Breakout, debuted at #1 on the Billboard 200 at this time. When I was taking my notes and saw Breakout,
honestly, I am a little very gagged.
I forgot all about that album, and suddenly I was having war flashbacks to all of the dramatics of dating at 14 years old. All of that was electroshock therapied when I remembered and heard Fly on the Wall again. That song, I don't care what you say, that song is a masterpiece. You release that song in any decade and it's a hit. It's a bop. It's amazing. She proved she was bigger than Disney and music when she starred in The Last Song, a film that I'm pretty sure was written entirely with her in mind, like for her. I don't know what came first, the chicken or the egg, because it is Nicholas Sparks that created this. I'm almost positive it was like a reverse situation and the movie came first and the book came second, or they came at the same time. But either way, it was a big deal for Miley's career. Production started in 2009 and represented one of her first major attempts to transition into more traditional Hollywood projects. In the background of all of that, Disney was planning Hannah Montana the movie, very smartly following in those Lizzie Maguire footsteps. When it finally opened, it opened at #1 at the US box office and eventually grossed around $156 million worldwide. The soundtrack went crazy too. Another Hannah Montana album that debuted at #1 on the Billboard 200 and had so many iconic songs. Yes, this was a Hannah Montana album, but it wasn't just Hannah Montana on it. Taylor Swift had her song Crazier on there, and I believe she co-wrote You Can Always Find Your Way Back Home. I don't know the exact name of the song, but it's a cute song. There was also The Climb and The Hoedown Throwdown. I remember at the time of release really enjoying the music from this album, but I did not see this movie until a few days ago, so I missed the moment and the big reveal didn't quite hit the same as an adult. When the film did come out, I was sort of on the outskirts at the time. I aged out of Hannah Montana. I thought this was the wrap up. I thought this was the end. I had heard about the reveal, but apparently this movie was not the planned ending for Hannah Montana at all, ever, which is surprising to me. What I did notice watching this film, with all of my hindsight, ironically, the film seemed to reflect Miley Cyrus's real life struggles at the time, balancing being a mega superstar and a normal teenage girl. The final season of Hannah Montana, titled Hannah Montana Forever, premiered in July 2010, and this was the big farewell. It had long blew by that 65 episode ceiling, and shockingly, to me at least, the numbers according to Nielsen for this final season were still very strong, around 4 million viewers on average. The series finale drew about 6.2 million viewers, which is so massive. Again, I was checked out when this aired, so I didn't know how it ended until I watched it for this video. Imagine my shock and horror when the big secret was revealed to everyone, not just her little hometown. I'm delusional and didn't want it to end that way, but I understand it was the only way to go. It was the best narrative decision. I'm sure Miley was happy it was all done. She was very clearly over it. She was 18 and free and ripping bongs. If I'm being really honest, I think Disney, for the most part, kept Miley and all of those other Disney kids pretty reined in. Disney had 50 years to prepare for Miley's wild child ways. Salvia Gate was just something that slipped through the cracks, and it did seem like a perfect send-off for the Hannah Montana era of Miley Cyrus. It was a pretty on-brand bridge to the Bangers era. Hannah Montana dominated kids' pop culture. They watched the show every week, begged their parents for concert tickets, got tucked into their purple Hannah Montana comforter at night, and threw on their guitar-shaped Hannah Montana backpack when they had to go to school in the morning. Hannah Montana was embedded in every corner of their life. A sitcom about a girl with a secret pop star identity had become a defining youth franchise, and it did it across every platform simultaneously, all under one roof, the Disney roof. That had never happened before, not like Hannah Montana. And if we look at the success of the show, none of this was an accident. Disney had spent 50 years learning exactly how young audiences attach to performers, how television builds loyalty that movies can't, how music and merchandise and touring can turn a character into something that lives with you long after the TV turns off. That's So Raven introduced a major influential comedy style and proved that one charismatic star could anchor an entire network. The Cheetah Girls showed how powerful music-driven properties could become, and showed what happened when they didn't have full control of the situation. Every failure, from Annette's moment fading, the Mickey Mouse Club alumni growing outside of the Disney bubble, letting Hilary Duff walk out the door, which I do thank Disney for, by the way. Without them telling her to kick rocks, we probably never would have gotten Metamorphosis, which means we probably never would have gotten the bop titled The Math. But all of those seemingly negative incidents, at least in the moment, taught Disney something crucial. Each success and each limitation refined the blueprint. By the time Miley Cyrus walked into that audition room, the system was finally ready to catch what it had been dropping for 5 decades. It was 50 years of trial and error finally converging. The right premise and the right performer, discovered by a studio that spent a very long time learning how to find perfect storms. Yes, Hannah Montana was lightning in a bottle, but that bottle was one that took Disney half a century to build. Finally strong enough to hold the lightning they had chased for generations.